Why I don't live in fear. Why I don't live in fear. Hello, y'all. I'm Dianna Brianne. I don't give advice, suggestions, information, recommendations. I just share with you my perspective on different topics, as is with this one. Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why I don't live in fear, but I do live in smartness. Okay, there's a big difference. And I understand why people can live in fear. I understand why people can become fearful. I understand, especially after something traumatic, one can become very fearful, and it can truly slow down or even stop their life due to fear. And, recently with what I had gone through, and I talked about that in the other video, it was related incidents, and it could have really instilled fear in me, and initially it did. And yet I remembered that fear, there's healthy fear and unhealthy fear. A bear charging at you through the woods tells you to get out of the way. That's a healthy fear. Being fearful to speak in front of other people is likely going to be an unhealthy fear unless it improves you and makes you better at speaking. And so, we have a wonderful security system in our home, and it's even better now. I take perfect precautions in my home. I really, really do. We have cameras all around our house, and even in some rooms of our house. And so, I take precautions. And so I'm not going to live my life in fear, even with what happened recently. And if you don't know that, you can go back and look at that video if you go back a couple videos ago. And I've known people that built their life around unhealthy fears. And we're not talking healthy fears that alert us to something. Initially, probably my fear was a healthy fear. But what happened a few days after, I began to check my doors constantly. And I realized I have cameras, I have a security system. There's no need for me to do that. And I'm very watchful when I go out. I'm very watchful of where I'm at and my environments and things like that. And yet, I think that, to let fear envelop a person's life is usually unhealthy. I knew someone growing up who had grown up in sheer poverty, and it really affected the rest of their life with fears. They had the fear of not enough. They had the fear of maybe in the winter not being warm enough. They had the fear of maybe not having enough food. They had the fear of not enough money. And this person would go to it was unbelievable, and they were a wonderful person, but they had to constantly seek validation to soothe their fears. I remember they would go around and ask people to look at their checkbook numbers to make sure that they calculated it right. And so they had gone to extremes. They were very fearful about money. Some people hoard, and they hoard because they fear that there's not going to be enough. I grew up where we always had a lot of food and we had warmth. And yet, we didn't have a lot of luxuries growing up. And so later in my life, I was all about luxuries for me. And I wanted more and more and more. And I wanted more beautiful things and more this and more that. And I realized that's no longer necessary in my life. Yes, it completed a part of my life by going through that stage of more and more and more. And yet, I don't need that now. I don't fear of not having enough. And even if something occurred and I didn't have enough, I would likely figure it out. And so what I'm trying to say is that people can get into a cycle of unhealthy fear. And I don't want to live my life ever like that, whether it's about safety, whether it's about money, whether it's about health. I take great care of my health. I do the very, very best I can. And yet there was a period of time a while back that I became a little bit fearful about my health. After all, I'm in my 60s. I was seeing friends that were either passing on or getting sick. And so I became a little bit fearful, and then I corrected myself and I said, you know what? I'm not going to be fearful. I'm not going to be fearful of things like that. I'm going to give it my best, take care of myself, and then I'll deal with the rest or anything else. And hopefully I always stay well. It's the same way as a lot of people fear getting older, but there's not a much better option. And hopefully we have great golden years in our lives if we take care of ourselves. But living in the fear of getting older, living in the fear of dying, usually doesn't do a whole lot of good. Now, do I understand why people get caught up into that? Absolutely, especially through a traumatic event like the person I was telling you about that grew up in sheer poverty. It can have a lifelong impact. And yet I believe in identifying that, at least for myself, and changing that. And I never want to be in a victim mentality. I want to be in a victorious mentality. And part of that is not living in fear, but it's living in smartness. From my house to yours, may God bless you. I hope you like, share, subscribe, and I hope to talk to you soon again. The links are pinned to the top of the comment section below, and I hope to talk to you then. Bye-bye.